It was supposed to be just another foreign policy roundtable. Polished smiles. Diplomatic pleasantries. The kind of event where words are spoken more for headlines than for history. The venue. A sleek, glass-walled hall in Washington. D.C. Inside, a curated lineup of world leaders sat beneath bright stage lights, sipping bottled water and rehearsing polite nods. The theme was emerging voices in global development, but no one expected to hear anything truly emerging. Until she spoke, Christy Noam, seated confidently at the center of the panel, leaned into her microphone. Her voice was smooth, but laced with something sharp. Maybe, she said, if you want to say in how the world works, you shouldn't be showing up from a place that still runs on aid packages. Go back to Africa. This room wasn't built for you. The words didn't echo, they exploded. Gasps ricocheted across the hall. A few American officials stiffened. Some glanced down. Others just blinked, pretending they didn't hear it. The moderator fumbled her cue cards. For a second, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. And yet, one man didn't move. Seated at the far end of the table, Ibrahim Traoré, calm, composed, and dressed in a tailored navy suit, simply looked at her. His fingers were gently folded on the table. He didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. Then, he smiled. Not the smile of someone caught off guard, or someone trying to keep peace. No, it was the smile of a man who'd been underestimated too many times, and knew exactly what was about to happen. He leaned forward slightly. His voice was soft, but every syllable cut through the room like thunder. I was invited here, he said, because this room claims to represent the future. If I'm not meant to be here, then perhaps the future isn't either. And just like that silence, a silence that didn't feel empty, it felt historic. Christy Noam blinked, not because she was intimidated, but because she didn't expect that. This is a space for policy, she snapped, reaching for control. Not protest. But Traoré didn't blink either. He nodded once, calmly, as if giving her space to finish before drawing the line. I agree, he said. Let's discuss policy then, because if we're honest, the only protest I see is your discomfort with a voice you can't silence. Boom. You could almost hear a pin drop. The moderator cleared her throat. Someone knocked over a glass of water. But the moment had already broken free from the room. Backstage, media staffers scrambled. Phones were already out. TikTok clips, Twitter threads. One phrase began spreading like wildfire. This is my room now. That wasn't just a quote. It was a spark. In minutes, the clip was everywhere. A simple exchange had turned into a cultural flashpoint. Traoré hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't insulted anyone. And yet, something seismic had shifted. In homes, dorm rooms, offices across the world, people hit replay. Not for the drama, but for the dignity. In that instant, Traoré wasn't just speaking for himself. He had become a stand-in for every voice ever dismissed, ignored, or told they didn't belong. But Traoré, he wasn't watching the internet explode. He had already left the building through a quiet side exit, away from the cameras and noise. Back in his suite overlooking the Potomac, he stood alone on the balcony. No entourage, no applause, just silence. Behind him, his communications director, Aisha, entered the room holding her phone. "We're getting over 12,000 messages an hour," she said. "From Africa, the diaspora, even American college students. They're calling it a turning point." Traoré didn't turn around. "And the others?" he asked. She hesitated. "They're calling you arrogant, a threat, a populist." He nodded slowly, still staring out at the river. Then they heard me clearly. By sunrise, Washington wasn't the same. Cable news ran the clip on loop. The phrase, "This is my room now," was stamped across every headline from international outlets to college radio. Pundits scrambled to find the right angle. Was it defiance, diplomacy, a disruption? In the White House Situation Room, the conversation was no longer about China or Russia. It was about Traoré. President Harris sat flanked by national security advisors, eyes fixed on a paused still from the roundtable. Traoré's composed expression on one side of the screen, Christy Noam's stunned face on the other. CIA Director David Rosen broke the silence. "This isn't just a viral moment," he said flatly. "This is geopolitical theater, and Traoré just became its unexpected star." Noam leaned forward, jaw tight. "We can't pretend this was innocent." He turned a development forum into a platform for confrontation. That line, that wasn't improvised. That was strategy. Rehearsed. Intentional. He's building a brand. President Harris didn't say a word, until she asked quietly, "And what do you propose we do about it?" Noam didn't blink. "Call it what it is, an intrusion into American political space. He's not here to collaborate. He's here to claim the room." Across the table, Deputy Secretary Miguel Ortiz chuckled under his breath. "What's funny?" she snapped. Ortiz leaned back, calm. "It's funny because it's working. The real question isn't what stage he used. It's why his words resonated so deeply." Noam's eyes narrowed. "Are we defending this man now?" "No," Ortiz replied. "We're analyzing what he represents. A new kind of leadership from the global south. Confident, calm, unapologetics." And that's when Harris finally spoke. "Effective," she said. Just one word. Meanwhile, miles away in a private room at the Burkinabe embassy, Traoré sat quietly with African ambassador. The air was electric. "You changed something yesterday," said the ambassador of Senegal. "They've heard us before, but this time they listened." Traoré didn't smile. "Words don't matter," he said, "unless they move something." And this time, they had. That evening, the Fox News studio pulsed with anticipation. A bold headline flashed across the screen. "Fury or folly?" Christy Noam responds to the Traoré firestorm. She sat poised beneath the studio lights, flawless makeup, razor-straight posture, and a fire in her eyes that no teleprompter could contain. The host leaned in. "Governor Noam, what do you make of Mr. Traoré's comments?" He stood on an American stage and, in many people's eyes, called us obsolete. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Let's be clear," she began, her voice sharp as glass. Traoré was a guest, and instead of building bridges, he grandstanded. That wasn't leadership. That was theater. The host pushed further. "Do you think he disrespected the United States?" She didn't hesitate. "He disrespected the very idea of diplomacy." This wasn't about dialogue. It was about dominance. Across the ocean, in the quiet of the Burkinabe embassy, Traoré and his team watched the interview unfold in real time. Some staffers were angry. Others just nodded. Aisha turned to him. "Are you going to respond?" Traoré's eyes never left the screen. "No," he said calmly. Aisha blinked. "Why not? You have the world's attention." He turned to her slowly. "Exactly why I won't waste it on petty rebuttals. Let her perform for the cameras." Then he paused. "I'll perform for the people." The next morning, while headlines screamed about controversy, Traoré made no statement. Instead, he stood beside leaders from Ghana, Senegal, and Côte d'Ivoire, and unveiled a game-changing infrastructure initiative, a multi-billion-dollar .ling blockchain-backed project, funded entirely by African banks, bypassing traditional Western aid. No speeches, no theatrics, just policy. Social media flipped again. He doesn't clap back, he builds. Noam criticizes. Traoré constructs. The contrast was striking and undeniable. In Washington, Noam saw the headlines. Her jaw clenched. "He's turning silence into power." Her aide muttered. Noam's voice was flat. "Then we'll turn noise into strategy." But deep down, she knew. He had already changed the rules. 1 week later, Christy Noam stepped onto a very different stage. No TV glitz. No pundits. This was a closed-door think tank event in D.C., packed with military analysts, foreign policy elites, and former diplomats. The kind of room where narratives are built before they hit the press. She didn't stand at the podium. She walked in front of it. Her heels echoed through the hall as she looked each person in the eye. "Let me be absolutely clear," she said, voice cool and calculated. "We are witnessing the rise of leaders who cloak defiance in dignity. They romanticize self-reliance, while quietly rejecting partnership. That's not humility. That's strategy. And it's dangerous." The room was dead still. No one saying it aloud. She continued. "But I will. Traoré doesn't want a seat at the table. He wants to flip the table." Pens scribbled. Recorders clicked. The soundbite was golden. Across the ocean, in a small university classroom in Burkina Faso, Traoré sat in a loose circle with a dozen young students and entrepreneurs. No stage. No security. Just open hands and honest voices. "We're not here to chase headlines," he told them. "We're here to chase solutions." One young woman raised her hand. "Mr. President," she asked, "they say you're dividing people, that you're dangerous. What do we say to that?" Traoré smiled gently. "You say the truth." A hush fell over the room. "We're not against the West," he said. "We're against dependency. And if that threatens anyone, maybe they never wanted partnership. Maybe they just wanted control." That moment, raw, unfiltered, was captured on a student's phone and uploaded to TikTok. The contrast was instant. Side by side. The world saw it. Noam at a podium. Warning of rebellion. Traoré in a circle. Listening. Teaching. Building. Within 48 hours. Hashtags flooded every platform. Number. New voices rising. Number. This is our room 2 number. Noam vs Traoré. Commentators didn't know what to do. In D.C., Traoré was labeled a disruptor. But everywhere else, he was starting to look like a blueprint. By week's end, Something had shifted, not on the surface but underneath. Suddenly, think tanks released white papers questioning Traoré's record. Shadowy Twitter accounts began recycling decade-old rumors. An obscure senator slipped a line into a speech. "We must be wary of those who wear democracy like a cloak while feeding their people illusions." The campaign wasn't loud. It was surgical. Christy Noam didn't endorse it openly. She didn't need to. A raised eyebrow here, a cryptic tweet there. "Beware of those who build walls," and call it independence. Behind closed doors, she told her aides, "Let him keep building villages. We'll remind the world what happens when leaders go unchecked." But Traoré had seen this tactic before. He called it the erosion strategy. Plant doubt, fracture alliances, distort perception. So he leaned into the storm and did the unthinkable. He invited international journalists, some critical blank those, some openly hostile to Burkina Faso. No script, no off-limits topics. "Spend 5 days with us," he told a stunned CNN reporter. "Ask anything. Film everything. Let the world see what we're really building." The result, a raw, groundbreaking documentary, Burkina Faso, Unfiltered. The footage hit like lightning. Drones soared over solar fields in former conflict zones. Young girls ran cooperatives. Entrepreneurs held tablets coded in 4 languages. Roads weren't named after colonial governors, but African inventors. Traoré didn't narrate the film. He didn't need to. Back in D.C., Christy Noam watched the footage in her office. Eyes narrowed. Her assistant hovered. "Should we respond?" She didn't answer at first. Then she muttered, "He's not just winning sympathy, he's making us look obsolete." Because Traoré hadn't just survived the smear campaign. He had flipped it. He turned erosion into elevation, doubt into demonstration, noise into proof. And across 3 continents, one message echoed louder than ever. He wasn't just in the room. He was rebuilding it. Christy Noam was done playing defense. The documentaries, the headlines, the chants echoing from dorm rooms to Dakar. Traoré's quiet rise had outpaced her loudest warnings. And now, her team was desperate for a reset. "We need a moment," her strategist said. "Not a memo, not a tweet, a televised confrontation. Global. Live. Undeniable." The proposal, an international leadership forum, a high-stakes panel hosted by a major U.S. network. The topic, the future of global partnership. It sounded neutral. It was anything but. "He won't say no." Her communications chief grinned. "He can't afford to look afraid. But we control the cameras. The format. The narrative. This is our arena." Noam nodded slowly. "Let's give him the stage he keeps asking for." When Traoré received the invitation, his advisors tensed. "It smells like an ambush," Aisha warned. But he didn't blink. "We don't run from conversations," he said quietly. "We own them." The night of the event, the world watched. Screens across continents lit up as the 2 figures entered from opposite sides. Noam, crisp in a navy suit, radiated practiced authority. Traoré, dressed in subtle West African embroidery, carried presence without performance. The moderator began with standard questions: economic cooperation, multilateral trust, post-pandemic recovery. Noam struck first. "You speak of trust. Mr. Traoré, she said, her smile tight. But isn't it convenient to preach equality while building trade with authoritarian regimes? Isn't that just hypocrisy wrapped in tradition? The room stiffened. Traoré posed. Then, with the calm of someone who'd been here before, he answered, "You confuse partnership with obedience. Miss Noam. Just because we don't choose your allies doesn't mean we choose your enemies." A ripple of silence followed. Noam leaned in again. "Some say your version of independence is just arrogance in disguise." Traoré met her gaze. Steady as stone. "You mistake confidence for arrogance because you're not used to us looking you in the eye." And in that moment, the game flipped. The trap was sprung, but it didn't catch him. It made him unforgettable. The clip hit the internet before the broadcast had even ended. Traoré's steady starry. Noam's faltering silence. That final line, "You mistake confidence for arrogance because you're not used to us looking you in the eye." It spread like wildfire. Within minutes, TikTok creators reenacted the scene like a stage play. YouTube analysts broke it down, frame by frame. Twitter called it the stare heard around the world. One viral post summed it up. She wanted to humiliate him. Instead, he handed her history. In Washington, Christy Noam sat with her media team, watching the chaos unfold across every screen. Her plan had been precise, structured, rehearsed, controlled, but the aftermath, uncontrollable. "He's not just a leader now," her aide muttered. "He's a symbol." Noam clenched her jaw. "I underestimated him," she whispered. Her strategist leaned in. "Then take back control. Leak a memo. Call it manipulation. Say he planned it all." But Noam shook her head. "If we push harder now, we look disparity. We wait. He'll slip. They always do." But Traoré wasn't playing that game. He had already returned to Ouagadougou. To a hero's welcome. Crowds lined the streets. Students marched with signs that read, "This is our room too. No more waiting." But Traoré didn't hold a rally. He didn't throw a parade. He walked quietly into a press room with a single message: "I didn't go to America to win arguments." He said, "I went to remind the world that Africa is not a guest in global affairs. We built rooms too. We belong in all of them." That quote, it cracked through the noise like thunder. Embassies began requesting meetings. Leaders who once avoided him now leaned in. Because Traoré hadn't shouted to claim space. He had stood still and made the room shift around him. And Christy Noam, for the first time, she was the one answering questions. In Washington, the tone changed. No more open jabs. No more fiery debates. The new strategy: whispers, doubt, quiet erosion. White papers appeared overnight, raising questions about Traoré's transparency. Cable anchors began each segment the same way. "We're not saying he's dangerous, but should we be concerned?" One senator went further. "We must be cautious of soft voices that speak hard truths. They often lead harder regimes." Funding for African NGOs was quietly frozen. Partnership talks delayed. Social media bots flooded platforms with distorted clips, twisting Traoré's words into something darker. The message was clear. If Traoré wanted the spotlight, he'd have to pay for the stage. But in Ouagadougou, Traoré remained unmoved. He canceled press interviews, declined talk shows, ignored op-eds. Until one morning, without warning, he stepped onto a campus stage in Dar es Salaam. No teleprompter, no fanfare, just a crowd of students and a single speech, the room we built. He didn't mention Noam. He didn't mention the smear campaign. Instead, he spoke of ceilings glass, iron, colonial, of how they only shatter when someone dares to stand too tall. You can't be excluded from a room you helped build, he said. And if the door is locked, we don't beg to enter. We build our own door, and we walk through it. The crowd rose like a wave. Applause, cheers, tears. Within hours, that speech was etched into graffiti across 3 continents. They invited us to speak. They didn't expect us to be heard. And back in the U.S., Noam received a memo marked Top Secret, the Traoré Effect. Inside, 3 African nations re-evaluating U.S. military presence. A joint Burkina Faso, China project announced. Surge in youth mobilization under Pan-African slogans. One diplomat whispered what others wouldn't say aloud. We tried to embarrass him. And instead, we gave him a global rebrand. Because Traoré hadn't just survived the storm. He had redirected it. The request came quietly. No press release. No media leak. Just a sealed diplomatic channel from Christy Noam. She wanted a private meeting. No cameras. No stage. Just 2 people. 1 room. Traoré said yes. They met inside a cold marble chamber at the UN headquarters in Geneva. It was the kind of room where peace treaties once began, and empires quietly crumbled. Noam arrived first, polished, poised, but different now. Her steps slower, her tone more measured. I came to tell you something, she said, breaking the silence. I don't regret my words, but I didn't expect the world to choose your silence over my soundbite. Traoré said nothing at first. Then, gently, you gave me an opportunity. I simply accepted it. She tilted her head. You had the whole world listening, she said. Why didn't you strike back? He looked at her, not with anger, not with triumph, just truth. Because I wasn't there to win a debate, he said. I was there to outlive it. The words hung heavy in the air. Noam stood, extended her hand. I don't respect your politics, she said, but I can't deny your presence. Traoré glanced at the outstretched hand, then looked to the door, and replied calm, unwavering. That's the difference between us. You came to be seen. I came because I already belong. He walked out. No handshake. No goodbye. Just silence again. But this time, it echoed louder than any applause. Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré stood on the presidential balcony as the sun dipped low. Beside him, a new figure, Awa, the 19-year-old student who once asked if he belonged, now appointed the youngest youth representative in Burkina Faso's history. She stood not as his symbol, but as his proof. And across the world, one truth remained unshaken. You don't need permission to enter a room when you helped build the foundation beneath it.